I am continuing in my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am continuing reading in a chronological order, according to event, not according to publication or volume, so I'm skipping around a bit as I move along. We are still in the book of Acts. The gospel has been opened to the Gentiles, starting with the conversion and baptism of Cornelius and his household. Peter, as the president, was the one called to open this ministry, but now Paul is the primary minister to the Gentiles. And we're moving into the travels of Paul. I think most of the rest of Acts will be focused on Paul. Peter and the apostles are still centered in Jerusalem. Paul has gone back up to Antioch, from which he went sailing to Cyprus and then up north into Asia, which today we would call Asia Minor. He was just kicked out of the city of Antioch, but in the surrounding regions the Gentiles have embraced the gospel. And that is where we left it, and we now pick it up. In this video we have a Joseph Smith translation. Now what the Joseph Smith translation is, this is a translation or correction done by Joseph Smith to restore those passages that have been lost or corrupted over the years. In chapter 14. And it came to pass in Iconium that they went both together into the synagogue of the Jews, and so spake, that a great multitude both of the Jews and also the Greeks believed. But the unbelieving Jews stirred up the Gentiles, and made their minds evil affected against the brethren. Long time therefore abode they, speaking boldly in the Lord, which gave testimony unto the word of his grace, and granted signs and wonders to be done by their hands. But the multitude of the city was divided, and part held with the Jews, and part with the apostles. And when there was an assault made both of the Gentiles, and also of the Jews with their rulers, to use them despitefully, and to stone them, they were ware of it, and fled unto Lystra and Derbe, cities of Lycaonia, and unto the region that lieth round about. And there they preached the gospel. So in Iconium, many Gentiles again are believing, and the Jews are trying to turn them against the apostles. And we get this division, some people siding with the Jews, some people siding with the apostles, and it actually goes down to physical attacks. There was an assault. An assault was made. The two sides started physically fighting, and so they left, and they go to these other towns in the region of Lycaonia. See, they were in Antioch in the region of Pisidia, and now they're going to the region of Lycaonia, so which I believe is a little bit farther east. So they've been going north, Perga up into Antioch, and they move over to Iconium, and then they travel east to Lycaonia. We continue now, verse 8. And there sat a certain man at Lystra, impotent in his feet, being a cripple from his mother's womb, who never had walked. The same heard Paul speak, who steadfastly beholding him, and perceiving that he had faith to be healed, said with a loud voice, Stand upright on thy feet. And he leaped and walked. And when the people saw what Paul had done, they lifted up their voices, saying in the speech of Lycaonia, The gods are come down to us in the likeness of men. And they called Barnabas Jupiter, and Paul Mercurius, because he was the chief speaker. Then the priest of Jupiter, which was before their city, brought oxen and garlands unto the gates, and would have done sacrifice with the people, which when the apostles, Barnabas and Paul, heard of, they rent their clothes, and ran in among the people, crying out, and saying, Sirs, why do ye these things? We also are men of like passions with you, and preach unto you that ye should turn from these vanities unto the living God, which made heaven and earth and the sea and all things that are therein, who in times past suffered all nations to walk in their own ways. Nevertheless he left not himself without witness, in that he did good and gave us rain from heaven and fruitful seasons, filling our hearts with food and gladness. And with these sayings scarce restrained they the people, that they had not done sacrifice unto them. So they come to Lystra, and they heal this man who has been lame from his mother's womb. He's been lame in the feet, never walked. Note this, they're not just restoring to him the ability he lost, but he's never walked. His legs are probably not naturally strong enough to even hold his weight. So this healing isn't just to restore the feet, but they have to give strength and vitality to the body so that the atrophy over time isn't affecting him. But the people see this, and they immediately think these guys are gods. So it's a reasonable conclusion for pagans. They call Barnabas Jupiter, and they call Paul Mercurius. This would be the Greek god Hermes and Zeus. Zeus is Jupiter, and Mercury is the Roman god, or Mercurius is the Roman god. That is Hermes. He's the messenger. And they call Paul Hermes because he's the one that's talking. Not because he's showing less power. It's Paul is the one that healed the guy. But because he's the one that does the talking, he's got to be the messenger god. He's got to be Mercury. And of course, they bring out all their stuff to do their sacrifices to him. I mean, they would have done the sacrifices in the temple as normal, but now they think the gods are with them, so they bring all their stuff out to do the sacrifices right there for the gods. And Paul and Barnabas have to really argue with them a bit before they'll believe that they aren't gods. And when they say, yeah, he let you carry on in your own way. God created everything, and he let you guys carry on, but he did give you witnesses in the fact that he created the seasons. He let the food grow. This is what God does for all people. This is the testimony of nature that all men have. But let us continue verse 19. And there came thither certain Jews from Antioch and Iconium, who persuaded the people, and having stoned Paul, drew him out of the city, supposing he had been dead. Howbeit, as the disciples stood round about him, he rose up and came into the city, and the next day he departed with Barnabas to Derbe. And when they had preached the gospel to that city, and had taught many, they returned again to Lystra and to Iconium and Antioch, confirming the souls of the disciples and exhorting them to continue in the faith, and that we must through much tribulation enter into the kingdom of God. And when they had ordained them elders in every church, and had prayed with fasting, they commended them to the Lord, on whom they believed. And after they had passed through Pisidia, they came to Pamphylia. And when they had preached the word in Perga, they went down into Italia, and thence sailed to Antioch, from whence they had been recommended to the grace of God for the work which they had fulfilled. And when they were come, and had gathered the church together, they rehearsed all that God had done with them, and how he had opened the door of faith unto the Gentiles. And there they abode long time with the disciples. So after they heal the guy, and they finally get the people not to be sacrificing to him, the Jews come from Antioch and Iconium in the Pisidia region into Lystra, and they start telling the people they need to get rid of these men. And it eventually results in Paul being stoned, and the Jews carrying him out and throwing his body out of the city thinking he's dead. They're just casting him out. But he stands up, teaches the faithful, and then they backtrack. They were in Derbe, they go to Derbe, and then they backtrack. So from Lystra they go to Derbe, then from Derbe they come back to Lystra, to Iconium, to Antioch, back down to the coast to Perga, but they don't return to Cyprus. They instead go straight over to the other Antioch, where they started from. And so we can see what their journeys were on this mission, where they went, when. And the reason they backtracked is because they did have faithful saints in all these cities. They had people who were baptized, who were believing, and they moved back through them and organized them into churches. They said they ordained elders. So that's what they're doing. They're organizing the church in each city. Then they are returning to Antioch to give the mission report. They're giving their mission report to the leaders in Antioch, these prophets that were earlier mentioned. So it seems that the Asia Minor area, what the Bible just calls Asia, that was the mission, and the mission there, that region was a single mission area, and the center of the mission was Antioch in the east. And from Antioch they went and preached all the other places. Cyprus is close enough, is an island close enough, that it was part of the same mission. Be like, being in the New England mission of America, or the British mission. They had the Asian mission. Now, there are a couple of Joseph Smith translations here. There's one Joseph Smith translation here. This is in verse 14, where it says, which, when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard of, they rent their clothes and ran in among the people crying. So this is when they heard that the people were trying to make sacrifices to them. Instead of which, it is just when. We take the word which out. So when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard this. So instead of heard of, it is heard this. Better grammar doesn't change the meaning in any way. So we leave it there, and I will actually be turning to the Epistle of James next. So I will see you there.